Have you ever stopped to wonder why? Even though you know that pornography brings no genuine advantage to your life, you still go back to it with each click, with each new video. Something inside you seems to be drained your energy, your willpower, your desire for the real world, and yet you continue like a prisoner who doesn't see the bars but feels their weight every day. The problem with pornography is not just moral or social. It is psychological, biological, and above all, strategic. What it is taking from you goes far beyond a few minutes of pleasure. It is robbing you of your ability to connect to desire, something greater, to feel the natural excitement of life. To understand this, we need to talk about dopamine, the neurotransmitter. Responsible for pleasure and motivation, every time you consume pornography, your brain receives an artificial burst of dopamine greater than any natural stimulus could provide. In the short term, this seems harmless, but in the long term, your reward system begins to become dysregulated. You become less sensitive to small pleasures, less motivated to seek real achievements. The world loses its color. Food tastes less good. Human touch feels uninteresting. You don't realize that your mind has been hijacked, but you feel apathy taking over. This is the invisible effect of pornography. It turns you into a passive spectator of life, waiting for ever stronger stimuli to feel something. And herein lies the great irony: you watch porn to feel pleasure. But the more you consume, the less pleasure you feel in real life. This is the paradox of desensitization. Psychologist Gary Wilson, author of the book Your Brain on Porn, explains that frequent porn users develop a tolerance much like a drug addict. What was once exciting becomes banal, and you need something more extreme to achieve the same effect. This is why so many end up immersing themselves in content they never imagined consuming, and this escalation has a price each time you give in to this cycle. Your mind becomes conditioned to seek instant gratification, exchanging real achievements for fleeting fantasies. Now think about the impact this has on your personal power. Men and women who have control over their desires are naturally more magnetic. They exude presence, confidence, and energy that attracts. This is because they direct their energy towards the world, not towards pixels on a screen. Robert Greene, in the 48 Laws of Power, talks about the power of scarcity. That which is rare becomes valuable when you spend your sexual energy without criteria. You become predictable, easily manipulated. But when you learn to control it, you become mysterious, magnetic, someone people sense but cannot fully decipher. Now look at what pornography does. It trivializes your sexual energy. It makes the extraordinary common. You get used to having everything at any time, just a click away. The mystery dies, the natural excitement disappears, and the worst part, the more you consume, the less you act. Pornography turns an active desire into absolute passivity. You want sex, but instead of seeking a real connection, you solve it virtually. You want love, but you settle for an illusion. You want power, but you give your energy to emptiness. It's a cycle of self-sabotage so subtle that most people don't even realize they're trapped in it. While you're there, alone, immersed in a fantasy, the world is happening out there and other people are living. Growing, conquering pornography doesn't just drain your desire. It hijacks your time, your energy, your presence in the real world. Now imagine someone who has never consumed pornography. This person feels real desire when they see someone attractive. They feel a real impulse, a motivation. To act desire is not disposable, but rather a force that drives them to create connections, to take risks. To develop charisma, they don't look for an easy solution, because they know that true pleasure lies in conquest, in the game of seduction, in physical presence. And this is where pornography causes silent damage. It conditions you to avoid reality. The exchange of glances on the subway ignored the spontaneous conversation at a party. Don't even try, because your brain has been programmed to prefer the easy way out, But the easy way has never been the way to power. And if you think that's an exaggeration, just look at the world around you. Men are increasingly insecure, lacking energy, lacking ambition. Women are increasingly dissatisfied. With partners who can't reciprocate emotionally, relationships are fragile. Disposable and lacking depth, pornography is shaping an entire generation to have less initiative, less courage, less presence, an army of distracted men and frustrated women. And all the while, the industry makes billions from their emptiness. The question you need to ask yourself is, who is in control you? Or porn, are you directing your own life? Or are you being programmed by impulses that aren't even yours? The truth is that every time you give in to immediate pleasure, you give up a little bit of your power. But if you learn to resist to channel that energy into something greater, you unlock potential you never knew you had. And that's what we'll explore in the next chapter. How pornography not only saps your energy and personal power, but also destroys your ability to truly love and connect with another person. Because if you think the biggest problem with pornography is that it's just a waste of time, you're about to discover that the pitfall goes much deeper than that. True love has always been a mystery. A force that attracts two individuals makes them risk everything. Brave risks and dive into the unknown. But what happens when this force becomes increasingly rare? Why do so many people today have difficulty feeling real connection? Why does love seem like a faraway, nearly impossible idea? The solution may lay right in front of us, and something we consume without recognizing. The collateral damage. Pornography. Pornography doesn't just steal your energy and personal strength, it reprograms your brain to desire the superficial and reject the profound. In theory, pornography and love should be opposites. One is quick disposable without ties. The other is intense, lasting, full of surrender. But in practice, pornography infiltrates the space of love, replacing reality with an artificial version. And this has much more serious consequences than most people imagine. Let's start with the psychological impact. The human brain is a pattern machine. It learns from repetition and adapts to what you condition it. If you get used to receiving pleasure without effort, without conquest, without emotional exchange, what happens when reality demands more? The answer is easy. You run away. Love involves patience, vulnerability, adaptation, but your brain trained by pornography consumption doesn't want the work. It wants the instant reward it has learned to seek. And here a profound problem occurs. Pornography kills the desire for conquest. Professor Zimbardo, famous for the Stanford experiment, has already warned about the crisis of modern relationships. He argues that young people exposed to pornography from an early age acquire less interest in real interactions. This is because the brain gets used to a reality where women or men are always available, always perfect, always obedient. A reality where there is no rejection, no obstacles, no need for communication. The problem, the real world doesn't function that way. This explains why so many people experience difficulties in maintaining long-term relationships. Pornography generates unrealistic expectations about sex and desire. A study published in the journal JAMA Psychiatry indicated that frequent pornography intake alters the structure of the brain, lowering the response to natural arousal and making real relationships less satisfying. Basically, the more you consume pornography, the less pleasure you have with a real partner. You lose your sensitivity to touch, to smell, to the subtle things that make human intimacy so rich. And if that weren't enough, there's another devastating effect. Pornography destroys vulnerability. Loving someone means opening up, admitting your flaws, risking rejection. But pornography teaches the opposite. It prepares you to seek pleasure without risk, without effort, without emotional interaction. This means that when a real relationship requires patience, dedication, understanding, your mind is already taught to give up, Because on the internet, there's always an easier alternative. Here's a brutal irony. Pornography simulates intimacy, but in reality, it isolates you. The more you consume it, the lonelier you feel. That's because the human brain wasn't intended to interact with pixels. It needs human contact, touch, emotional exchange. The consequence, a vicious circle of dissatisfaction, where the more porn you consume, the less you connect with real people. And the less you connect, the more you resort to porn. To fill that vacuum no glance around. You realize how fragile, disposable, and ephemeral relationships are today. How many individuals can fully give themselves to each other? How many are willing to go through the initial discomfort of vulnerability? Pornography turns love into an obsolete concept, a beautiful but impractical idea. It reduces relationships to transactions, takes the mystery out of desire, and turns the sublime into something mechanical, but all is not lost. There is a way out. In the next chapter, we will explore how pornography not only affects your desire and emotional connection, but also undermines your personal power, your presence in the world, and your ability to lead and influence, because the impact of this problem goes far beyond what most people realize. Personal power is not something you can buy. It doesn't come from money, status, or luck. It comes from your presence, your energy, your ability to influence the environment around you. But what happens when that energy is drained, wasted on artificial stimuli that only simulate satisfaction? The answer is brutal. You become weak, not physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Pornography creates a sense of control. You choose what to watch, when to watch it, how many times you want. But the reality is exactly the opposite. The more you consume, the less control you have. Think about it. True power comes from self-discipline, from the ability to say no to easy pleasure and yes to difficult achievements. But pornography does the opposite. It trains you for instant gratification to seek the easy way, out whenever you feel desire, frustration, or boredom. The moment you give in to this habit, you are no longer in control. Your impulses are in control. Robert Greene, in the 48 Laws of Power, teaches that those who control their desires have an advantage over those who are controlled by them. Desire is one of the most powerful forces in human nature. It moves us to create, to conquer, to build empires. But when this desire is dispersed into passive consumption, it loses its power. Look at the difference between a man who channels his sexual energy to develop charisma, presence, and ambition, and another who spends this energy on 5-minute video alone in a dark room. The first becomes magnetic, someone who naturally attracts attention and respect. The second becomes indifferent to the world, without willpower, without intensity in his gaze. And believe me, people notice this. Here is a paradox that few understand. Repressed desire does not weaken it, transforms into power. Historical figures such as Napoleon, Tesla, and Da Vinci understood this intuitively. They knew that sexual energy is a raw force that, when directed correctly, can drive creativity, leadership, and innovation. Pornography does the opposite. It dissipates that energy, turning it into a temporary relief that ultimately only weakens your will. And here's the cruise: pornography isn't just a harmless pastime, it's a distraction mechanism, a sedative that keeps you from being the person you could be now. Think about something. Have you ever noticed how your motivation plummets after ingesting pornography? How your will to perform anything productive disappears? That's no coincidence. Pornography depletes dopamine so intensely that your brain goes into a state of apathy, of demotivation. Afterward, you don't feel like working, socializing, challenging yourself. It's like all the energy has been sucked out of you, and that affects your presence in the world. Powerful people are perceived by their energy, by the way they look, speak, and move. They have something indescribable, an inner fire that attracts and inspires. Now think of someone who consumes pornography regularly. Their gaze is not steady, their energy is scattered. Their posture is fragile. People sense this, even if unconsciously, because personal power is not something you say, it is something you feel. So the final question is, do you want to be the spectator or the protagonist of your life? Because as long as you are trapped in pornography, you will always be the spectator. Power lies in scarcity and the ability to resist impulses and transform that energy into something greater. Desire, it is the force that moves empires, destroys nations, and defines the destiny of men. But there is a difference between those who master their desire and those who are enslaved by it. Robert Greene, in the 48 Laws of Power, demonstrates that desire may be a technique of manipulation. If you don't control it, someone else will. Pornography demonstrates this. It turns a great human impulse into weakness, distraction, and inactivity. You become a prisoner to your instincts, while those who grasp this dynamic use desire to achieve authority. Great leaders, Napoleon, Cleopatra, Machiavelli, understood a basic rule. The more predictable you are, the less influence you have. The more scarce you are, the more valuable you become. Scarcity creates attractiveness. Pornography accomplishes the reverse. It trivializes desire, making it easily available, reducing mystery and tension. It prepares your brain for rapid pleasure, stripping away patience, seduction, and psychological engagement. Robert Greene argues that strength derives from controlling energy. Great seducers seldom give everything at once. They build expectation, cultivate tension, and leave people wanting more. Pornography kills this dynamic. It offers everything swiftly, without opposition, dulling your ability to desire fiercely. Uncontrolled desire implies weakness. Those who crave excessively lose value. Porn consumption is an act of need, turning you into a passive observer rather than an active participant. This is felt in real life. Energy is perceptible. A person drained by pornography lacks presence. Their glance fades, body slumps, speech loses conviction. In contrast, someone who manages their energy exudes confidence and magnetism. Their yearning isn't spent on dreams, it fuels their reality. This is power, desire subdued, not indulged. Here's the irony. While you remain locked in passive consumerism, others use this dynamic against you. The porn industry thrives on vulnerability. As Greene teaches, true power consists in detecting patterns and escaping manipulation. Pornography is a losing game. The more you consume, the weaker and more addicted you become. The way out? Resistance, control, intentional scarcity. Because in the game of life, bystanders never win. If it's evident that pornography drains your vitality, your ability to love, and your own strength, the question is, how can you end the cycle? Rewire instant gratification. Your brain loves quick pleasure. Break this by finding satisfaction in effort. Engage in activities that increase enjoyment over time. Exercise, deep study, mastering abilities. This rewires your brain to seek fulfillment in overcoming, not escaping. Sublimate desire. History's great figures diverted sexual energy into creation and conquest. Nikola Tesla remained celibate to fuel innovation. Napoleon employed tension to compel presence. Instead of withdrawing into dreams, focus that energy into tough workouts, artistic endeavors, or personal goals. Rebuild presence. Porn conditions you to be passive. Reverse this. Strengthen your posture, eyes, and voice. Train your social presence. Engage. In meaningful discussions, cultivate mystery. Project confidence. Just being present transforms your energy. Master desire. Controlled desire is a tool. Stop spending it on pixels. Use it to produce attraction in reality. Porn has made you predictable and weak. Reclaim scarcity. Control your focus. Cultivate an aura of mystery. People who grasp this become easily magnetic. Cultivate deep love. Porn erodes actual connection, yet this can be repaired. Learn to be present in interactions. Develop empathy. Embrace tension, patience, and emotional depth. True closeness isn't consumed, it's generated. As long as you're locked in the porn loop, you're watching life instead of living it. But if you break free, recapture your desire, and rebuild your power, you'll realize the real world offers something no screen ever can. True joy was never digital. It was always in living deeply. Now, be honest. Have you ever felt invisible, no matter how hard you try? It's not about lacking value, it's about making it evident. Social dynamics aren't fair. If you don't know the rules, you're left behind. But you don't have to stay invisible.